The clock is ticking at Old Trafford, not the clock on the scoreboard, not the one counting down to the next match. The clock that matters right now is the one counting down to June the 11th, because that is the date Sir Jim Ratcliffe has circled on his calendar as the absolute deadline to have a new permanent manager in place at Manchester United. The World Cup kicks off in North America on that date, and Ratcliffe wants his man identified, appointed and ready to work before that tournament begins. This is not about optics, this is not about public relations. The reason behind that deadline is deeply practical, and it reveals a great deal about how seriously the club is now approaching long-term planning. The new manager needs to be in position early enough to attend the World Cup, monitor players on the global stage, identify transfer targets, and begin planning pre-season preparations for July. Every week of delay is a week of ground lost in the transfer market. A week where rival clubs are already moving ahead. The situation right now is one of genuine urgency, and what makes it even more intense is the backdrop against which this appointment is being made. Because this is not just any managerial search, it is a search being conducted under the weight of a series of catastrophically expensive mistakes. Ratcliffe and his leadership team cannot afford to get this wrong again. Here is the financial reality that frames everything happening at this club right now. The combined cost of dismissing Erik ten Hag, replacing him with Ruben Amorim, and then parting ways with Amorim as well, could end up approaching £40 million. Think about that for a moment. £40 million spent on managerial instability. That is money that was not spent on the pitch. That is money that did not go toward rebuilding a squad that has been crumbling for years. Ruben Amorim lasted just 14 months in charge. That is the shortest reign of any permanent Manchester United manager since David Moyes, who himself was dismissed after just 8 months in 2014. The compensation package to remove Amorim from his role could cost the club as much as £16 million. Before wages, before staff settlements, when you factor in wages, the numbers become staggering. The club effectively paid Amorim and his staff more than £1 million for every single month he was at Old Trafford. And here is the detail that makes all of this even more pointed. It was Ratcliffe himself who pushed through the decision to bring Amorim from Sporting Lisbon. The manager wanted to wait. He had expressed the preference to delay any move. But Ratcliffe pressed ahead, and look where that decision led. So the weight of the next appointment does not sit solely on the shoulders of whoever is chosen. It sits most heavily on Ratcliffe. His credibility as a leader of this club is now directly tied to getting this right. A reputation that is already under serious strain cannot absorb another mistake of this magnitude. If you are new to this channel and you want this level of in-depth analysis on every major story surrounding Manchester United, hit that subscribe button right now. At United HQ, we do not just report the headlines, we break down what they actually mean for this club and its future. Subscribe now and join the conversation. Let us start with Michael Carrick, because he is the central figure in the immediate short-term picture. Carrick is currently the interim manager. He is the man in the dugout right now, and the situation is that he has been given a very clear and very specific condition under which he could earn a permanent contract. That condition is Champions League qualification. If Carrick delivers Champions League football for next season, it is understood he will be handed a permanent deal. That is not a rumour. That is the framework the club has put in place, and it makes complete sense from a strategic standpoint. Rather than making another rushed, expensive appointment in the middle of a season, the club is allowing results on the pitch to determine the decision. It is results-based recruitment. If Carrick earns it, he gets it. But if he does not secure that Champions League place, the club is expected to look elsewhere. That is where the broader managerial search becomes relevant. And the list of names in the frame is both fascinating and complicated. Let us go through them one by one. Thomas Tuchel is not an option. The situation is clear on this point. Tuchel is currently managing England at international level, and his commitment to that role runs through the World Cup. That rules him out entirely, regardless of how England perform at the tournament. Carlo Ancelotti is similarly unavailable. Ancelotti is leading Brazil at the World Cup. His focus, his energy, and his contractual obligations are all directed toward the Brazilian national team. Manchester United are not in that conversation. Mauricio Pochettino is also off the table for the same fundamental reason. Pochettino is the current manager of the United States national team. With the World Cup being held in North America, his involvement in that tournament is total. He will not be walking away from that for a club appointment. Jurgen Klopp has admirers within the power structure at Old Trafford. The evidence suggests that his name has come up in internal discussions. But the reality is that Klopp is simply not a viable option. The reason is straightforward, and it needs no further elaboration. His deep and celebrated association with Liverpool, Manchester United's most bitter rivals, makes that appointment essentially impossible from a cultural standpoint. It would be one of the most divisive decisions in the club's recent history. That leaves two names that deserve serious attention. The first is Luis Enrique. The situation surrounding the former Barcelona and Spanish national team manager is this. He is currently the manager of Paris Saint-Germain. Senior figures at Old Trafford view him as their preferred choice. The problem is that Manchester United fear he is set to sign a contract extension with Paris Saint-Germain. If that extension is completed, the door closes on that option. This is still a live situation, but the signs are not encouraging from United's perspective. The second name is Diego Simeone, and this is the name that may surprise some viewers because it has largely flown under the radar in discussions about this appointment. Simeone is currently the manager of Atletico Madrid. He has been at that club for many years and has built a record of extraordinary sustained success despite operating in the shadow of neighbouring Real Madrid, one of the most powerful clubs in world football. The numbers associated with his tenure at Atletico are impressive. He has won 8 major trophies during his time there. That includes 2 La Liga titles and 2 Europa League titles. He has also led Atletico Madrid to 2 Champions League finals. This is a manager who knows what it takes to win at the highest level, to compete with limited resources relative to the biggest clubs, and to maintain consistency over a long period. There is also a practical element that works in United's favour when it comes to Simeone. His contract with Atletico Madrid runs until 27. That means the compensation required to bring him to Old Trafford would not be astronomical. The financial exposure in terms of a buyout figure is not the barrier it might be with other high-profile candidates. So the realistic picture right now is this. If Michael Carrick secures Champions League qualification, he gets the job. If he does not, the leading external candidate appears to be Luis Enrique, if he is still available, and if Luis Enrique signs that Paris Saint-Germain extension, Diego Simeone becomes perhaps the most credible alternative on the table. Now let us shift focus to the transfer picture, because the managerial situation and the summer window are completely intertwined. The new manager will need players, and there is one name right now that sits above all others in terms of Manchester United's midfield rebuild. That name is Elliot Anderson. Anderson is currently a midfielder at Nottingham Forest. The situation is that Manchester United view him as a priority target for the summer. The thinking at the club is that Anderson would be the ideal midfield partner for Kobbie Mainoo, at least within the system that Michael Carrick has been operating. His profile, his energy, and his technical qualities are seen as complementary to what Mainoo brings to the team. But United will not have a clear run at this one. The competition is serious. Manchester City are also monitoring Anderson. Chelsea are in the mix. Bayern Munich have also been mentioned as a potential suitor. And if Newcastle United lose Sandro Tonali this summer, they could potentially enter the race as well, though their financial position and current league standing make them a less likely challenger for his signature. There is a significant factor that works in Manchester United's favour here. It concerns the type of player Elliot Anderson is said to be when it comes to making career decisions. The understanding is that Anderson will not be driven purely by wages when deciding his next move. His priority will be the project being offered to him. He wants to join a club with clear ambition, a clear direction, and a genuine vision for where it is heading. This is critically important for United. It is worth contrasting with the situation involving Antoine Semenyo in January. United missed out on Semenyo, but the reason was financial. The club was not willing to match the wage demands he was seeking as part of an effort to bring the overall wage bill under control after years of excessive spending. That financial discipline cost them that deal. With Anderson, the dynamic is different. If it is true that the player prioritises project over finances, then Manchester United's ability to present a compelling vision for the future becomes their greatest asset in this pursuit. The appointment of the right manager, the clarity of the transfer strategy, and the direction of the club under Ratcliffe's leadership all become recruitment tools in themselves. There is also an important element of timing in this discussion. Anderson is expected to be one of the most talked about transfer targets across the Premier League this summer. His performances at Nottingham Forest have attracted widespread attention, and the risk for Manchester United is that if they allow this transfer to drag on past the World Cup in June, the biggest clubs in Europe, including Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid, could enter the picture. Those clubs operate at a financial level where they can simply outbid most rivals. The view is that Manchester United cannot afford to wait on this one. The push to get an agreement in place should be happening right now, before the summer market frenzy begins. Getting Anderson signed and announced before the season ends would be a statement of intent. It would also free the club up to focus resources on other areas of the squad that need attention. One such area is the departure of Casemiro. The Brazilian midfielder is expected to leave the club in the summer. His exit will create a significant gap in the midfield, and rebuilding that position is described as the first and most urgent priority for the football operation, led by Christopher Vell and Jason Wilcox. Anderson is identified as the standout solution to that problem. There is also a connection being drawn between Anderson and a potential sale. If Manchester United successfully recruit Sandro Tonali from Newcastle, the funds raised could, in theory, contribute toward financing the move for Anderson. The club may not need to choose between the two. The logic being explored is that one deal could help fund the other, but some analysis of the midfield situation suggests that United may actually need two players of genuine quality in that position, not just one. The depth of the rebuild required, combined with the departures expected, means that a single high-profile signing may not be enough to fully address the problem. The full picture of Manchester United's situation right now is one of enormous consequence. Every decision being made, from the managerial appointment to the summer transfers, is happening under the microscope of a fan base and a football world that is watching to see whether this club has genuinely changed its ways. The managerial instability of the last 2 years has cost approximately £40 million. The financial damage is real, but the damage to the culture of the club, to the sense of direction, and to the confidence of the fan base goes far beyond what any balance sheet can measure. Ratcliffe came into this club promising transformation. He promised modern thinking, long-term planning, and smarter decision-making. The appointment of Interim, pushed through when the manager himself had reservations, was a significant blow to that narrative. It raised serious questions about whether the decision-making processes at the top of this club had actually changed. The next appointment is the moment where those questions begin to get answered. Getting it right will not undo the damage of the last 2 years, but it will signal that the club has learned from its mistakes and is capable of making sound, considered decisions under pressure. Getting it wrong again would be a different story entirely. A reputation that is already hanging by a thread cannot survive another misstep of this magnitude. Ratcliffe knows that, the people around him know that, and the decision they make before June the 11th will define the direction of this club for years to come. At United HQ, we will be covering every development in this story as it unfolds. The managerial appointment, the transfer activity, the pre-season preparations, and everything in between. If you want to stay ahead of the story and get the analysis that goes beyond the headlines, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you want to see as the next permanent manager of Manchester United? And is Elliot Anderson the right man to anchor the midfield rebuild? Let us know. We read every single comment. This is United HQ. Stay with us.